Jake Martinez pushed his cleaning cart down the long metal hallway of Kepler Station, as he did every night for the past 8 years. The wheels made soft squeaking sounds on the polished floor, but nobody was around to hear them. The night shift was always quiet, and Jake liked it that way. He could work in peace while the important people slept. The station was huge, with hundreds of rooms and corridors. Jake knew every inch of it. He had cleaned every corner, mopped every floor, and emptied every trash bin thousands of times. The place was like a second home to him, maybe even more familiar than his small quarters in the worker section. As Jake worked, he listened to the hum of machines and computers that never stopped running. Kepler Station was a research facility where humans worked alongside aliens from 2 different species. The Zephyrians were tall with blue skin and large eyes that seemed to glow in the dark light. The Karathi looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs with clicking sounds when they talked during the day. Jake saw these aliens talking with human scientists and diplomats. The conversations were always about important things like faster-than-light travel, new weapons, and peace agreements between different worlds. Jake heard bits and pieces as he cleaned nearby, but nobody ever paid attention to him. He was just the janitor captain. Lisa Hayes was Jake's supervisor. She was a kind woman who always said good morning when she saw him, but she never asked about his work or opinions. Jake reported to her every week about supplies needed and areas that required extra cleaning. She would nod and sign the papers without really looking at them. The humans on the station included many smart people. Admiral Karen Price was the station commander, and everyone respected her. Colonel Pete Romano ran security and always looked serious. Dr. Amy Carter worked on physics experiments that Jake did not understand. Sergeant Ben Torres helped with station defense and sometimes nodded at Jake in the hallways. Jake had learned to move like a ghost through the station. People would talk freely around him, as if he was not there. He heard things about research projects, alien technology, and political problems between different species. His memory was very good, and he remembered everything he heard, even if it did not seem important at the time. One night while cleaning the research labs, Jake noticed something strange. A group of Zephyrian delegates were meeting in a restricted area where they were not supposed to be. Jake hid behind some equipment and listened to their conversation. They spoke in their own language, but Jake had picked up enough words over the years to understand some of it. They talked about humans being dangerous and needing to be controlled. Jake felt worried, but when he told Captain Hayes the next day, she just smiled and said, aliens sometimes had private meetings, and it was normal. She did not seem concerned at all. Few nights later, Jake found Karathi workers accessing computer files in areas where they did not belong. He watched from the ventilation system above as they copied data onto small devices. Jake tried to report this too, but Colonel Romano was too busy to see him, and his assistant said it was probably just routine research work. Jake started paying closer attention to the aliens' behavior. He noticed they were having more secret meetings, and some human staff members seemed nervous. Admiral Price looked tired all the time, and Colonel Romano kept checking security reports. Jake began to feel like something bad was going to happen, but nobody would listen to him. While cleaning the ventilation shafts, Jake discovered small pieces of alien technology hidden in places where nobody would normally look. The devices were small and smooth, with no obvious purpose. Jake had never seen anything like them before. He took pictures with his cleaning tablet and tried to show them to his supervisors, but they said the items were probably just dropped by accident. The Zephyrians and Karathi had always worked separately on different projects, but Jake noticed they were starting to meet together in secret. These meetings happened late at night in empty conference rooms. Jake managed to listen to some of these conversations and heard words that frightened him. They talked about cleansing and removing primitive species. Jake realized they were talking about humans. The aliens thought humans were too violent and dangerous to be allowed to grow stronger in the galaxy. They were planning something terrible, but Jake was just a janitor and nobody would believe him. Even worse, nobody seemed to notice the signs he was seeing. The station continued Its normal routine during the day, scientists worked on their experiments, diplomats held meetings, and security personnel maintained their patrols. But Jake could feel the tension building like a storm getting ready to break. He started keeping a small toolkit with him at all times, and made sure he knew where every emergency supply was located. One night Jake overheard a conversation between a Zephyrian commander and a Karathi leader. They spoke in basic human language, which made Jake think. They wanted to be understood. The Zephyrian said the time was almost ready, and asked if all preparations were complete. The Karathi clicked its response, saying the primitive species would be eliminated within days. Jake felt cold fear run through his body. He had to do something, but what could one janitor do against advanced alien technology and military forces? He thought about trying to contact other human stations, but the communications were probably being watched. Jake realized he might be the only person on Kepler station who knew what was coming us. Jake finished his cleaning rounds that night. He looked around at the peaceful corridors and sleeping quarters filled with humans who had no idea their lives were in danger. Tomorrow might be their last normal day. Jake decided he would try one more time to warn someone in authority, but he also began making his own preparations. He gathered cleaning supplies that might be useful in an emergency, and hid them in places throughout the station. Jake also made sure he knew every maintenance tunnel, ventilation shaft, and hidden passage. If something bad happened, he would need to move without being seen. The janitor, who had spent 8 years being invisible, was about to become the most important person on Kepler station. The quiet hallways that Jake had walked thousands of times were about to become a battlefield, and he was the only one ready for war. The attack began at exactly 3 in the morning during Jake's night shift. He was cleaning the observation deck when the first explosions shook the station. The lights flickered and alarms started screaming throughout every corridor. Jake dropped his mop and ran toward the security office to see what was happening through the large windows. Jake could see alien ships surrounding Kepler station. There were dozens of them, both Zephyrian fighters with their sleek blue hulls and Karathi vessels that looked like giant metal insects. The ships were firing energy weapons at the station's defensive systems, which exploded in bright flashes of light. Jake reached the security office and found it empty. The guards had probably run to their battle stations. Jake knew the basic codes because he had watched guards enter them hundreds of times while cleaning. He activated the monitoring system and watched screens showing what was happening throughout the station. The alien assault was fast and brutal. The station's outer defenses lasted only minutes before being completely destroyed. Enemy fighters swarmed around the station like angry bees, while larger ships moved into position. Jake watched in horror as alien boarding pods attached to the docking bays and began cutting through the metal doors. In the main command center, Admiral Price was shouting orders to her staff, but it was too late. The aliens had clearly planned this attack for a long time and knew exactly how to disable the station's systems within minutes. The power grid failed and emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Jake saw alien soldiers pouring through the breached docking bays. They moved in organized groups with advanced weapons and armor. The Zephyrians carried energy rifles that fired blue beams, while the Karathi used projectile weapons that could punch through metal walls. Human security forces tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed. The aliens seemed to know exactly where to go. They moved directly toward important areas like the command center, weapons, storage, and communication rooms. Jake realized they had been studying the station for weeks or months, preparing for this moment. His warnings had been right, but now it was too late. In the security screens, Jake watched as human personnel were being captured. Admiral Price and her senior staff were surrounded in the command center. Colonel Romano and his security team fought bravely, but were forced to surrender. When alien reinforcements arrived, Dr. Amy Carter and other scientists were rounded up from their laboratories. The aliens were not killing humans. Instead, they were taking them prisoner. Jake could see groups of people being marched toward the cargo holds under heavy guard. The invaders wanted humans alive for some reason, which was both good and bad. Jake stayed hidden in the security office watching the screens and trying to understand the alien plan. He could hear their communications. Through the station's intercom system, the Zephyrians and Karathi were working together perfectly, which meant this alliance had been planned for a long time. From what Jake could understand, the aliens intended to use Kepler Station as a forward base for attacks on human colonies throughout this sector of space. They considered humans a dangerous species that would eventually threaten galactic peace. The solution was simple: eliminate humanity before humans could become too powerful. Most of the station was now under alien control. Jake could see enemy soldiers patrolling the corridors he had cleaned for 8 years. They had set up command posts in key locations and were installing their own equipment. The Zephyrians seemed to be in charge of technical operations, while the Karathi handled security and prisoner management. Jake realized he might be the only free human left on the station. The aliens had focused on capturing important personnel and securing strategic locations. Nobody had thought to look for the night shift janitor, who knew every hiding place on the station. Using his knowledge of the maintenance tunnels, Jake began moving through areas the invaders had not yet secured. He could travel between sections without being seen, using ventilation shafts, service corridors, and utility spaces that were too small for the tall Zephyrians or bulky Karathi soldiers in. The engineering section, Jake found supplies he could use. Cleaning chemicals could be mixed to create smoke or even explosive reactions. Industrial tools could become weapons if used correctly. The station had plenty of materials that aliens would not recognize as dangerous, but Jake knew their potential. Jake made his first move against a small Karathi patrol that was guarding a maintenance area. He used the station's cleaning robots, which he had programmed many times during his work. The robots could be directed to spray various chemicals, and Jake loaded one with corrosive cleaning solution. The Karathi soldiers entered the maintenance bay. Jake activated the cleaning robot from his hidden position. The machine sprayed the aliens with industrial-strength acid that burned through their armor and sent them running in panic. Jake managed to seal the area and trap them inside. The small victory gave Jake confidence, but he knew this was just the beginning. The aliens had hundreds of soldiers and advanced technology, while he had only his knowledge of the station and whatever supplies he could find. Jake needed to be smart and patient over the next few hours. Jake conducted a careful campaign of sabotage. He rerouted power to cause equipment failures in alien-controlled areas. He introduced cleaning chemicals into the air recycling system that created choking fogs. He used the intercom to broadcast false information that made the Zephyrians and Karathi suspicious of each other. Jake also began searching for other human survivors. He found small groups hiding in storage areas and medical facilities, people who had been overlooked during the initial assault. Dr. Amy Carter was hiding in a supply closet, and Sergeant Ben Torres had barricaded himself in an armory. Slowly, Jake built a small resistance group. They were not soldiers, but they were motivated to fight for their lives and their species. Jake shared his knowledge of the station, and together they began planning more ambitious operations against the alien occupiers. The janitor, who had been invisible for 8 years, was now the most important person on Kepler Station. He had become a ghost warrior, moving through shadows and striking where the enemy least expected. The real war was just beginning, and Jake intended to make the aliens regret ever underestimating humanity. Jake had transformed from janitor into warrior, but his weapons were still mops, buckets, and cleaning chemicals. He mixed industrial solvents with maintenance supplies to create explosive devices that could destroy aliens. Equipment, the same hands that had cleaned floors for 8 years now built bombs from household materials. The resistance group grew larger each day. Jake used his knowledge of the station's hidden passages to rescue more humans from the cargo hold prisons. Dr. Amy Carter became his technical advisor, helping him understand the alien technology they captured. Sergeant Ben Torres trained the rescued civilians in basic combat skills. Jake learned the alien languages by listening to their communications. He had always been good at picking up words and phrases during his cleaning work. Now this skill became crucial for understanding enemy plans. The Zephyrians used logical military terms, while the Korathi clicked out commands in their insect language. The aliens began to fear what they called the ghost in the machine. They could not understand how their equipment kept failing or how humans kept disappearing from supposedly secure areas. Jake used the station's maintenance systems like weapons turning heating pipes into steam cannons and electrical systems into shock traps. His greatest advantage was understanding both human nature and alien psychology. The Zephyrians were smart, but they followed rules and procedures rigidly. They could not adapt quickly. When Jake did something unexpected, the Korathi were efficient workers, but they lacked individual creativity and relied too much on group thinking. Jake exploited these weaknesses by creating chaos that forced both alien species to make emotional, rather than logical decisions. He would cause explosions in one area to draw security forces, then attack a completely different location while they were distracted. The aliens wasted time and resources chasing shadows. One night, Jake planned his most daring operation yet. The aliens had converted the main dining hall into a command center with important communication equipment. Jake knew he could reach the area through the kitchen ventilation system, which he had cleaned hundreds of times. Jake prepared special cleaning robots loaded with corrosive chemicals and programmed them to activate on his signal. He also mixed cleaning supplies to create a smoke bomb that would confuse the aliens long enough for him to complete his mission. The attack began when Jake released the smoke into the dining hall through the air vents. The thick gray clouds blinded the alien guards and triggered their emergency procedures while they were trying to clear the air. Jake sent in his weaponized cleaning robots. The robots sprayed acid on the communication equipment and computer systems, destroying weeks of alien intelligence work. The Zephyrian commander tried to stop the attack, but Jake had anticipated this. He activated the sprinkler system, which spread the corrosive chemicals over a wider area as the aliens fled the damaged command center. Jake appeared from the ventilation shaft with a weapon he had built from a floor buffer. The spinning brushes had been replaced with metal blades, and the motor had been modified to run at dangerous speeds. Jake fought his way through the confused alien soldiers, using his intimate knowledge of the dining hall layout. He knew every table, chair, and service station. The aliens stumbled over furniture, while Jake moved like he was dancing through a familiar ballroom. The victory was complete, but Jake knew the aliens would respond with increased security and better weapons. They were learning to respect human unpredictability, which meant future operations would be more dangerous. The next few weeks became a deadly game of cat and mouse throughout Kepler Station. Jake and his resistance fighters used guerrilla tactics to harass the alien occupiers. They would strike quickly at weak points, then disappear into the maintenance tunnels before reinforcements could arrive. Jake discovered that the aliens were bringing in specialized equipment to detect human movements. The Zephyrians had sensors that could track body heat, while the Korathi used devices that detected the chemical traces humans left behind. Jake had to develop new methods to avoid detection. He began using the station's industrial cooling systems to mask heat signatures and cleaning chemicals to eliminate scent trails. Jake also taught his resistance fighters to move through areas where alien sensors could not function properly, like near the fusion reactors or in the electromagnetic field generators. The psychological effect of the resistance was as important as the physical damage they caused. The aliens had expected to face human military forces with conventional weapons and tactics. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy who turned their own environment against them. Morale among the alien occupiers began to decline. They were losing soldiers to booby traps made from cleaning supplies, and their equipment kept failing due to sabotage. Even worse, the two alien species started blaming each other for the security failures. Jake encouraged this division by leaving false evidence that suggested the Zephyrians were secretly working against the Korathi, or vice versa. He planted fake communication devices and staged attacks that looked like they came from the wrong alien species. Resistance also focused on freeing more human prisoners. Jake knew every entrance to the cargo holds where civilians were being kept. His teams would create distractions in other parts of the station, while rescue groups infiltrated the prison areas. Each successful rescue operation brought new skills to the resistance. Some humans were engineers who could build better weapons. Others were computer specialists who could hack alien systems. Jake welcomed everyone because he understood that every person had valuable knowledge. The aliens began requesting reinforcements from their home worlds, but Jake had damaged the long-range communication systems. This forced them to send ships back to alien space, which reduced their forces on the station. Jake realized he was winning a war of attrition. As weeks passed, Jake noticed changes in alien behavior. The occupiers were becoming more paranoid and less efficient. They posted guards in areas that had never been threatened and spent resources protecting equipment that was not strategically important. The janitor, who had once been ignored by everyone, was now the most feared human in alien space. His name was whispered in Zephyrian planning sessions and clicked nervously in Korathi's security reports. Jake Martinez had become a legend, and the war was far from over. The message came through alien communication channels that Jake had learned to monitor. The Zephyrian High Command was sending their Shadow Guard, elite warriors trained from birth to eliminate any threat. The Korathi Queen Mother was dispatching her death-sworn, the most feared soldiers in their entire species. Both groups were coming to Kepler Station with one mission: kill the human resistance. Jake gathered his fighters in the main maintenance bay, where they had established their hidden base. Dr. Amy Carter looked worried as she analyzed the intercepted communications. The elite forces would arrive in 3 days, with advanced equipment designed specifically to hunt. Human Sergeant Ben Torres checked their weapons supply, which consisted mainly of improvised devices built from station materials. They had energy weapons taken from defeated aliens, but ammunition was limited. Jake knew they could not win a direct fight against professional soldiers with superior technology. The resistance had grown to include 40 humans, but most were civilians with basic training. Jake looked at their faces and saw fear mixed with determination. These people had survived weeks of occupation and learned to fight, but they were not soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, maintenance workers, and administrators. Jake spent the next 2 days studying every detail he could find about the incoming elite forces. The Zephyrian Shadow Guard wore armor that could deflect most human weapons and carried energy rifles that could burn through metal walls. Their training focused on patience, precision, and overwhelming firepower. The Korathi Deathsworn were even more dangerous. They moved with insect speed and coordination, using razor-sharp claws and projectile weapons that fired explosive rounds. Their armor was lighter, but their natural exoskeleton provided protection. While allowing quick movement when the elite forces arrived, Jake watched from hidden cameras as their ships docked with the station. The Shadow Guard emerged in perfect formation, moving like blue ghosts through corridors they had never seen before. Their commander was General Vexstar, whose reputation for eliminating rebellions was known throughout Zephyrian space. The Korathi Deathsworn scuttled out of their transport with clicking sounds that made Jake's skin crawl. Their leader was Queen Warrior Thrixnell, whose mandibles had reportedly torn apart entire human settlements on border worlds. She moved with predatory grace that promised swift death. Both elite units began systematic searches of the station, using equipment that could detect hidden humans through walls. Jake realized his usual hiding places would not work against these sensors. The resistance would have to fight or be hunted down like animals. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone. He ordered the resistance to split into small groups and hide in the most dangerous areas of the station, near the fusion reactors and electromagnetic fields, and around the industrial waste processing systems. The elite soldiers might find them, but the environment would limit alien advantages. The first contact came when a Shadow Guard patrol encountered Ben Torres and 5 resistance fighters in the weapons storage area. The battle was brief and brutal. The Zephyrians advanced methodically, using covering fire and tactical coordination that overwhelmed the humans. Jake arrived too late to help, but he studied the aftermath. The Shadow Guard had used minimal ammunition and taken no casualties. They moved like they were performing a rehearsed dance. where every step was planned. Jake realized conventional resistance tactics would fail against such professional opponents over the next day. Jake lost 12 fighters to the elite forces, the Shadow Guard, eliminated resistance cells with mechanical precision, while the Deathsworn used their speed to catch humans before they could escape. Both alien units seemed to anticipate every human tactic. Jake knew he had to change the nature of the fight. The elite soldiers expected to face desperate humans with improvised weapons. Instead, Jake would give them something no training could prepare them for: a janitor who knew every pipe wire and ventilation grate in the entire station. Jake began his personal war against the elite forces by targeting their greatest strength, their equipment. He used his knowledge of the station's power grid to create electromagnetic pulses that disrupted alien sensors. The Shadow Guard found themselves blind in areas where Jake controlled the electrical systems. The Karathi Deathsworn relied on their natural speed, but Jake turned the station's artificial gravity generators into weapons he could create. Sudden changes in gravitational fields that sent the insect warriors tumbling into walls or ceilings. Their coordination meant nothing when up and down kept changing. The psychological warfare began when Jake started leaving messages for the elite commanders. He used cleaning supplies to write words on walls in alien languages, telling them they were fighting in his house by his rules. The messages appeared in impossible locations that should have been secured. General Vexstar increased patrols and security measures, but Jake had spent 8 years learning to be invisible. The Shadow Guard could not catch an enemy who moved through spaces too small for their armor. Jake used maintenance tunnels that connected every part of the station. Queen Warrior Thrixnel tried to flush Jake out by threatening human prisoners, but Jake had anticipated this. He rescued the hostages using diversions that split the Deathsworn forces. Then he struck at their temporary command post, using weaponized cleaning robots. The final confrontation was inevitable. Jake knew the elite forces would eventually corner him, so he chose the location himself. The main hub of Kepler Station was a large circular chamber with multiple levels connected by walkways. It was also the heart of the station's cleaning systems. Jake entered the hub, carrying only a reinforced mop handle, and his knowledge of every cleaning system in the chamber. General Vexstar and Queen Warrior Thrixnel were waiting with their best soldiers. This would be the battle that decided humanity's fate. On Kepler Station, the aliens expected Jake to hide or run. Instead, he walked calmly to the center of the chamber and activated the industrial cleaning systems. Powerful jets of water, soap, and disinfectant filled the air, creating a fog that limited visibility in the chaos. Jake became a ghost, moving through an environment he had cleaned thousands of times. The elite soldiers stumbled on wet floors while Jake danced between obstacles he could navigate blindfolded. His mop handle became a weapon that struck from impossible angles. General Vexstar fired energy blasts that illuminated the fog, but Jake was never where the alien expected him to be. Queen Warrior Thrixnel charged with deadly speed but slipped on industrial lubricant that Jake had spread across her path. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Jake used every cleaning chemical and maintenance tool in the chamber. His greatest weapons were not the improvised devices, but his absolute knowledge of the fighting space. When the fog cleared, both elite commanders lay defeated on the floor. They had considered beneath their notice. Jake stood over them with his mop handle, the janitor, who had just beaten the finest warriors in the galaxy. The remaining alien forces on Kepler Station surrendered within hours. News of the victory spread throughout human space and beyond. Jake Martinez had proved that humanity could not be underestimated, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of Jake Martinez and his victory at Kepler Station spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Human communication networks carried the story to every colony and outpost, while alien intelligence services tried to understand how their finest warriors had been defeated by a janitor. The psychological impact was enormous. Throughout human space, ordinary people realized they could fight back against seemingly impossible odds. Mechanics on mining stations began studying their facilities. Like Jake had studied Kepler Station, maintenance workers on cargo ships started seeing their knowledge as potential weapons on Earth. the government offered Jake every honor they could think of. Military academies wanted to study his tactics. Politicians wanted him to lead new defense initiatives. Corporations offered him wealth beyond anything a janitor could imagine. Jake politely declined them all. The alien response was divided. The Zephyrian High Command recalled their forces and began reassessing their intelligence about human capabilities. How could their strategic planning have failed so completely against a species they considered primitive? Some Zephyrian leaders called for immediate peace negotiations. The Karathi Queen Mother was furious that her finest warriors had been humiliated by what she still considered a lowly human, but other Karathi leaders pointed out that perhaps humans were not as weak as they had believed. The insect species began debating whether war with humanity was worth the risk. Other alien civilizations watched these events with growing interest. The Altarians had remained neutral in the conflict, but now they wondered if humans might make valuable allies. The crystalline Vorthan began studying human psychology to understand how such determination was possible. Jake returned to Kepler Station as the facility was rebuilt. The destroyed sections were repaired with new technology and better defenses. Admiral Karen Price offered Jake any position he wanted in the military or station administration. Jake asked for only one thing: to remain as head of maintenance operations. The new Kepler Station became a symbol of human resilience. Diplomats from dozens of species visited to see where the famous janitor had made his stand. The main hub where Jake had defeated the elite alien warriors was preserved exactly as it had been during the battle. Jake established a training program for maintenance personnel throughout human space. He taught them to see their work environments as potential battlefields and their knowledge as strategic advantages. The program was called Custodial Defense, and it spread to hundreds of facilities. Humans like Danny Kim came to Kepler Station specifically to learn from Jake. They wanted to understand how someone could transform from invisible worker to legendary hero. Jake taught them patience, observation, and respect for their environment. Above all else, the aliens who now worked alongside humans at the rebuilt station treated Jake with deep respect. Zephyrian scientists would nod politely when they saw him in the corridors. Karathi researchers would click greeting sounds that showed honor to a worthy opponent. Jake still did his maintenance rounds every night, but now he was accompanied by teams of specialists who documented his methods. Every technique he had developed during the resistance was studied and improved. The simple act of cleaning had become a form of military science. Galaxy had learned that humanity possessed something more dangerous than advanced weapons or superior numbers. They had adaptability, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat. Even when facing impossible odds, humans would find ways to survive and fight back. Jake often walked through the corridors he had defended, thinking about how much had changed. The same maintenance tunnels that had hidden him from alien soldiers now housed communication lines connecting Kepler Station to new human colonies. The ventilation shafts, where he had moved unseen, now carried air to aliens and humans working together. Children throughout human space learned about Jake Martinez in their history lessons. He became a symbol that anyone could make a difference, regardless of their job or social status. The story inspired a generation of humans to take pride in work that others might consider unimportant. The resistance fighters, who had served with Jake, became leaders in their own right. Dr. Amy Carter designed new defensive systems based on techniques she had learned during the occupation. Sergeant Ben Torres established training centers where civilians learned to fight for their freedom. Jake received reports from across the galaxy about humans using his methods to defend their homes. A cook on a transport ship had repelled pirates using kitchen equipment. A farmer on a border world had defeated alien raiders using agricultural tools. Every victory proved that humans could not be conquered. The Zephyrian and Karathi alliance crumbled as both species blamed each other for the failure at Kepler Station. Some factions within each civilization began seeking peace with humanity, while others prepared for a longer war against an enemy they now knew was dangerous. Jake established memorial gardens on Kepler Station for the humans who had died during the occupation. He wanted to make sure future generations remembered the price of freedom. The gardens were maintained by volunteers who understood that even simple work could be an act of courage. Years passed, and Jake grew older, but his legend only grew stronger. New threats would emerge, and humanity would face other challenges, but the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth about human nature. When pushed to the edge, humans would not break, they would adapt and overcome. The janitor, who had swept hallways for 8 years, had indeed mopped the battlefield with the galaxy's elite forces. In doing so, he had changed how every species viewed humanity. Jake Martinez proved that in humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or weapons, but in their refusal to surrender. Jake often stood in the observation deck, where he had first seen the alien attack ships. He would look out at the stars and think about all the worlds where humans were building new lives. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but humanity had proven they belonged among the stars. The final lesson Jake taught his students was simple: pay attention to everything around you, learn every detail of your environment, respect the work you do, because someday that knowledge might save not just your life, but the lives of everyone you care about. The janitor had become the teacher, and his classroom was the entire galaxy. In quiet nights when Jake walked his rounds through Kepler Station, he could hear the hum of machines and the whisper of air through ventilation systems. It was the sound of a living facility where humans and aliens worked together, building a future that neither species could create alone. The custodian of Kepler Station had helped clean up more than just the floors. He had helped clean up the galaxy itself.